Okay, thank you all for joining us today for Take Action Tuesday, our live cast podcast. I'm your host this week, Jeffrey Caesar with Rights and Democracy. I'm the Outreach Director. Right now, before we start off, we're going to give a quick birthday shout out to Elise Greaves, who is one of our other hosts. She unfortunately couldn't be here today because he's busy turning up right now. And yes, we'll be joining her a little bit later. Today our show will be focusing on restorative racial and economic justice here in Vermont.
Great.
I'm here with our special guest, Ebony Nyoni, the founder of Black Lives Matter Vermont and the proprietor of Shop for Change, Vermont's first and only cafe for people to come together and be completely free of supremacy, patriarchy, and oppression. We have the great fortune of being here in the shop today as we are shooting. And hello, Ebony Nyoni. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself, your background, who you are, what you mean to Vermont?
Well, I'm not sure what I mean to Vermont, but I'm, obviously Ebony Nyoni, and I came to Vermont some years ago to attend the University of Vermont, and I have family here. I have been married here, and just doing me in Vermont.
Cool. Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and it's really I'm honored to have you here today. One of the big things today, we're going to talk about restorative justice, restorative economic and racial justice, and that's a big thing here in Vermont. Mm-hmm. Because Vermont being such a progressive place is one thing, but the lack of diversity here really doesn't account for a lot of what goes on. Because there are so few people of color, the racism that exists, both institutional, implicitly, and that's wound up in our communities is very alive and well. These are things that make it difficult for people of color to come to Vermont and stay in Vermont and to thrive in Vermont. Now, there are only a few Black businesses, this being one of them, the Shop for Change and Ebony's Hair Salon. And aside for, our African food stores that really keep the culture alive, we are few and far between. Ebony, so when it comes to the concept of restorative justice, could you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Sure. Well, as Wendy Williams would say, in my mind, restorative justice is an opportunity for the offending party to reconcile his or her or its wrongs with reparation of some sort to those wronged. This is a necessary solve in order for healing to take place on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And, restorative justice, it's such a deep meaning. It's such a deep understanding that we're really missing in a lot of our work for racial and social equality. Making equality is one part of it, but what is equality? Equality is right now. These are the things that we're doing and actively moving forward with in order to make things better for the future. But that doesn't negate from the history of systemic racism that has been built into the system. We look at issues like redlining and the preventative measures that our government had explicitly taken in order to prevent people of color from moving into certain neighborhoods, buying houses, buying property. The implicit bias that is, really stems from generations of misinformation, of racism that has existed within our culture and perpetuated, is alive and well in our police systems, or in our criminal justice system. We all know the darker the skin, the deeper the sentence. It's a proven fact. You've got African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos, Arabs getting disproportionately punished with much harsher sentences for much slighter crimes than our white counterparts. And so these issues are all a part of it. Ms. Nyoni, when you look at the concept of restorative justice, what does that look like here in the state of Vermont? And what are some of the things that your organization is doing to do so?
Sure. Well, I guess restorative justice in Vermont looks like, in my mind, Vermont's leaders and institutions recognizing how systems have and continue to serve as mechanisms of oppression for poor and marginalized people groups, with, of course, Black people being at the bottom of the totem pole. Black Lives Matter is helping citizens of color find justice in a diversity of ways. This includes the school systems. We've been starting with the Chittenden County school systems, in particular Burlington School District, and asking important questions related to the policy and disparities amongst students of color. We also have been working with the criminal justice system, making sure that decisions that are being made involving communities are fair, and that communities are kept safe for all people of color and marginalized groups.
Excellent, excellent. And Mark Hughes, hopefully he'll be able to join us a little bit later. He is the founder of Justice for All, an organization that has been doing great work here in Vermont in criminal justice reform and working to ensure that there is a police oversight board that is established and composed of not just communities of color, but individuals and organizations that have invested, that have stake and invested in, in the success of communities of color here in Vermont. They were very successful with HB 492 in pushing that bill into legislation, to getting that passed to the Senate. I was very fortunate. I was able to testify in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee on on the need for impartial policing and getting the police oversight board implemented in the state. It went through. There was a few changes, and Mark, you'll be able to talk about that a little bit more. The Senate and the House, in the negotiations, they did gut it a little bit. However, it's still something that is historic in this state, and really, really, really an aspect of that we need to hold on to. Ms. Nyoni, as one of the big issues with restorative justice is the inability to acknowledge the history and the appropriate history of what actually happened. One thing that a lot of Vermonters will always claim to fame is that Vermont was the first state in the Union to get rid of slavery. However, that's not necessarily true. Could you explain that to more to us?
Well, we all know, many of us know now, if not before, that that is definitely not a fact. In fact, it's still basically legal to have slaves. There's two different points to that. One is that through our countries and our states' correctional criminal justice system, when Black and brown people go into the system, they become slaves of the system, which is why a lot of private correctional facilities have been springing up, and that's totally historic. The other thing is that the Vermont law, they outlawed slaves. If it was male, it was 18, and woman, it was 21, and so children were definitely enslaved, and residents of Vermont were able to continue to have slaves. And a couple of things around them turning of age, the age that they were allowed to be free, they would just flip them to be considered servants, indentured servants, or a lot of times they would ship them to Montreal or back to Connecticut or New York to continue being slaves.
Wow, there's such a deep history here in Vermont of of slavery, and although it's interesting when you look at that effect. You really wonder, if Vermont was really the first state to have slavery abolished. You'd think there'd be more Black people here. Am I right or am I right?
Right.
I'd like to give a quick shout out to my sister, Desiree Caesar, who joined us on this podcast. Lovely to see your name pop up. I love you. Also, one of the things with restorative justice, looking into the history of slavery in Vermont and how it's really played out, Vermont Law School, the Black Law Student Association down there. Last year, we started a program of working called Operation Moses. And what this is, it's to help restore the history and acknowledge the plight of slaves that we've had here in Vermont. And so in the town of South Royalton, there are a few statues. There's a statue that commemorates the children who died in the Civil War. There's a statue that commemorates the men who died in the Civil War. But there's nothing to commemorate the slaves or the network of abolitionists that really drove the movement forward. And so what we've proposed is to have a statue reclaimed in the center of South Royalton, and to ensure and acknowledge what we have done, what the history is. A little known fact of South Royalton in the town square is that Harriet Tubman, it was one of the final stops on the Underground Railroad. And Harriet Tubman actually gave a speech right there in the center of that ground. You would think that that would be much more acclaimed in this state as a big piece of history. So a few parts of what we're actively working for is, one, getting a statue reclaimed. Another one is to have a mural put up to let people know and see the beauty and diversity of what was there, but also to really give knowledge and thanks to our allies. That allies aren't something that's new. Wearing a safety pin don't do nothing, but hiding some slaves in your basement, that was a life or death, thing that you would do. And these are the people that really moved us forward. And so, now as we look into the future of the next few years, and we're seeing, the abject racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, people and xenophobia that's being perpetuated from the highest levels in our country, we're really needing our white allies to come and stand by our side and get in the game, become comfortable being uncomfortable. That's the best advice I can give. When you see a microaggression happen, when you see, something inappropriate happen, use your space to call it out and remove some of that burden from the individuals that have to deal with it. I know as a male and growing up with, sisters that kicked my butt, one of my power, my strength comes from the women in my family. That's a big part of it. And so when I see, those injustices happening across the board, I realize, I've got to stand up and advocate for this. Mm-hmm. And so that's just, that's one of the things my parents always taught me. You must always advocate for yourself, because you can never count on anyone to advocate for you. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you must always advocate for the next person, because they might be relying on you. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to stand by each other for real. Another thing that we're working to do, which is I think one of the most fun parts of Operation Moses, is getting the houses and the farms that were originally on the Underground Railroad, having them recognized and given recognition in the state's historical registry. Mm-hmm. And so what that is, it's essentially giving, in a lot of states, they'll give, a tax break, and a plaque will be placed on top of the residence. Mm-hmm. And it's a really important aspect to recognize these things. A few states are doing it. In about 2000, the National Park Services, they actually had a bill signed into Congress to have the trail of the Underground Railroad listed throughout the states. And Vermont is one of the few states has the fewest registered sites. I believe there's only 3 right now, when we know for a fact that there are so many more. So getting that into play would be really, really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. And so, let's see. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions at this time or at all through the interview, please send in your questions. We'd love to hear from you and love to answer your questions. Ms. Nyoni, do you have any thoughts?
Totally. I agree with what you said. I think Vermont still has very rich history that hasn't even have yet to be discovered, whether it be the history involving Black people, and Vermont's history includes those Black people who were not brought here as slaves, but who helped the armies fighting the war and who helped with other aspects of developing Vermont, as well as Native American history. I think those two histories have been suppressed for many years, and it's really time for Vermont to acknowledge, when we talk about restorative justice, the real history of the state.
I like that, her story, because this is her story, not his story. I can get with that. Yeah, so, also giving a big shout out to homies down at the Black Law Student Association in Royalton. They've been doing a lot of great work. Every February, they host a month-long series of events and really bringing culture and bringing, representing our people down in that region. And so any of our listeners out there that would be interested in going to see that, make sure you tap into that network next February. Yeah. And so would you, we're waiting for Mark Hughes to give a call in. I think he just texted me, but let's check that.
I'm in, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's really interesting when kind of jumping topics, so going back and looking at the state of the issues here in Vermont. One thing that I was recently introduced to was, the exact racism that is going on in our Vermont public schools. I had the pleasure of going in and visiting a student group that was phenomenal. A lot of young ladies, a lot of them were part of the African diaspora. Some were newly arrived from, different countries in Africa. And we got to talking, and it was really, really both cathartic, but also heavy when we left the session, because, these young ladies were facing so much more racism than I had ever experienced in my life. And of course, I grew up in Virginia, in a very diverse part of Virginia. But at the same time, there's certain things that you can experience and you internalize, and coming up to Vermont and really being the only Black person in my space oftentimes, going days without seeing any other people of color that I didn't already know. There's a feeling of isolation, and especially the isolation becomes very strong when something happens. You're faced with a microaggression or macroaggression. Someone calls the cops on you for not doing anything, or someone says that you did something that you were violent towards them when that wasn't the case. And you have to sit back and think, and you realize, wait, the only people I can call that I really know well to discuss these issues are hundreds of miles away. And so, stepping into that space and seeing kind of how they were dealing with these things, these young ladies are strong. There are teachers that are blatantly racist, students that understand it, administrations that will not listen to them. Even the administrators that are of color in these communities are not listening to what the children have to say. Do you have any thoughts on that and how we can move forward and ensure that we're being just with the young with our youth of color here in Vermont?
Sure. Well, we've been, like I said, we've been working with the Burlington School District to find, based on our areas of expertise, we've been working on finding different opportunities for the district to be able to work with students so that it's not such a harsh disciplinary result as suspension and expulsion is. I think, for example, Burlington High School alone has a serious problem with suspending students of color for very minor reasons. They've developed a diversity team, and they've developed some other things to try to figure out what they could do, but the problem doesn't necessarily always lie on the outside. Sometimes it lies within. And until district people start developing a sense of self, well, who am I? What am I doing here? What brings me to this work? Who are the youth that I'm working with, and how do they affect me, the same cycles will continue.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. Mark.
Hey, good evening.
Hello?
Can you hear me okay?
All right. Got rid of that echo. All right. It's always a little disconcerting when you hear your own voice. You realize you sound a lot higher pitched when you thought you did before. You know, in my head, I got this old Barry White voice. But yeah.
You should try
Mark, welcome to the call. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
We can't hear you, Mark.
You can't hear me at all, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. No, you had me nervous there for a minute because we just had some technical difficulties. I'm at a film viewing down at Christ Episcopal Church in Montpelier, and the first 30 minutes we were just dealing with audiovisual. But
excellent.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I'd like to everyone, this is Mark Hughes, the founder of Justice for All. He is the gentleman that has been pushing so hard with his phenomenal team to ensure that racial justice is here in Vermont. Mark, can you tell us a little about the bill for those of us who don't already know what it's about, and can you tell us where it's at right now in the House?
Exactly. Let me just go ahead and jump into that if you can still hear me. I'm just moving really quickly because I'm going to get back inside. But first of all, let me just give a shout out to everybody who's on the call, particularly yourself and folks like my sister, Ebony, Nyoni, and so many others who've been fighting this fight for years and years and years. Much, much respect to you, my sister. Loving you much. And I really appreciate all the work that you guys have put in to lay the foundation for the work that we're doing now. So I don't take that for granted by one stretch of the imagination. And I think that everybody needs to, keep this thing clear and don't get it twisted. This is an effort that is precept upon precept. And what's going on here is we are continuing the work that's been established for decades. Okay. So where we're at right now is that as recent as this afternoon, I had a conversation with the clerk's office at a house, and Melissa's telling me that the bill only became prepared for transfer to the governor's office at the last part of last week, and they do not come and retrieve those bills on a daily basis. In fact, as much as we thought they were going to come from the governor's office and retrieve the final 9 bills of the session 1, which is 308, that's not going to happen until tomorrow, which means the 5-day clock would start on Thursday. If nothing else happened, we'd have a law at somewhere around Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. That's the long and short of it. The governor has 3 options to either sign this thing into law, which we'd like it to see him do. What I'm encouraging everybody to do is to call the governor's office at 828-3333. Again, that's 828-3333. I'll say that one more time, 828-3333. Give them a shout. Let them know what you're looking for. Tell them you want to see them. You'd like to have that bill signed in a public ceremony. We're not asking them to sign the bill. We're asking them to do it publicly. Okay. Another way you can get at them is go to governor.vermont.gov/contact-us/message. That's governor.vermont.gov/contact-us/message. You can go ahead and shoot them a note over there. It's just fill in the blank. You can give them a shout. Again, he can either sign that bill, or else he can veto the bill, or else what he can do is he can just wait 5 days. And if he doesn't do anything to the bill in 5 days, essentially that bill becomes a law. So that's the long and short of kind of like where we are. It's not very complicated. There's a campaign that's underway right now. We've got I think I just hit up about 600 emails just right before I came on the call. So there'll be a lot of folks on the call receiving emails that we'll continue this campaign throughout the evening, just to let folks know what's going on. I think in addition to that, as a part of that email, what we're doing is we're letting folks know what kind of action to take, like I just told you. The other thing is come out, party with us on the 4th. Party with us on the 4th. We're going to have a huge party just to celebrate the work that we've accomplished. We're going to be in Hubbard Park on the 4th, starting at 2 p.m. We're going to have some live music, a lot of food, a lot of folks, and a lot of fun. So if you can come out for that, that'd be awesome. And finally, please attend the Racial Justice Reform Coalition meeting Those of you who are members, it's Thursday the 25th. It's at the Unitarian Church in the Bell Tower at 1 p.m. Again, it's Thursday, May 25th in the Unitarian Church in the Bell Tower room at 1 p.m. It's hugely important that we continue the momentum and follow through on what we started. Here, we're going to complete our plans on the upcoming celebration. We're going to discuss the bill signing and continue mapping out the implementation plan for 308. So a separate invitation is going to be getting mailed out to those of you who are already coalition members. Those who just want to come and join in, you're welcome to do so. Please take a look out and take a look out on our Facebook pages, the coalition Facebook page, as well as our Facebook page. There are still petitions that are out there. One of them has over 1,400 signatures on it. Another one has well over somewhere around 600, and then there's others. Let's continue to push those petitions. Let's continue to do everything we can do in the community to keep the attention on this. Just Sessions is not going to sleep. He's been continuing, even recently, of trying to escalate the war on drugs by a couple of memorandums that he just moved out. He's also continuing to try to put pressure on law enforcement on sanctuary cities and so forth with another memorandum he put out. This thing is not slowing down, folks. And if you're not in it to win it, you might as well go somewhere and sit down. Okay, so let's get busy and let's stay focused.
Let's stay focused. Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. You know, the implementation of this racial justice reform bill, it will be important to help. It'll be important to help track the aggressions and what happens, the injustices in our criminal justice system, and can provide a lifeline for people of color in marginalized communities who are disproportionately stigmatized by the criminal justice system. Which has really become a vehicle for implicit and unconscious racial bias to take root. Do not be mistaken. Vermont famed progressivism in predisposition, or being liberal, is one thing, but racism and racial bias are alive and well. It's not easy to live in this state as a person of color, and you're consistently profiled and targeted in every day of our lives. I can honestly say I grew up in Virginia. I've lived there my whole life. I lived in Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, for years, and I have never been followed and watched more times in my life. I've never experienced racial tensions and issues to the same frequency and the magnitude as I have here, and that's coming from the horse's mouth. Our public schools are one thing. They hold disparagingly low employment and retention rates for faculty of color. They have some of the lowest per capita in the country. We need more people of color owned businesses, owned and operated here. We're talking about building community capital, equity in the Black community, in the Latino community, in the Indigenous community. The Indigenous community here in Vermont has all but been erased. No one talks about it. It's the Abenaki people are here. They're intermingled. There's an entire history of genocide and the eugenics movement that stemmed right out of UVM, that Hitler himself, his group, used to, perform genocide on the Jews. People don't know that. It's just until recently, I don't know if the updates, but they're still holding the bones of the indigenous ancestors of the Abenaki in the UVM research laboratories. Documentation that of who these individuals are. Yet the state of Vermont refuses, and has refused for quite a long time, to actually acknowledge the ancestors of those Abenaki as actually being indigenous, because they don't want to give up that power. And so it's constant fights. Just take action. We're having a bunch of take action events coming up this week. On Monday, May 22nd, there's a creative protest workshop from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Hive Art Studio in Pine Street in Burlington. Black Lives Matter creative protest workshop. It's for ongoing discussions involving skill building, experimentation, and the practice of direct action in protest. This is located right behind Speeder and Earls on Pine Street. Look for the building.
Speeder and Earls.
Woo! It's some great coffee. I think Speeder and Earl actually just changed.
Not better than what?
Oh, Speeder and Earl's good. My bad. Not better.
Then equal
Here's a plug.
Coffee shop. The shop for change coffee has fair trade, organic, with a hint touch of Ebony.
Oh,
Hell yeah.
Don't get this coffee.
Don't make me come up there.
I like my coffee like I like my activists. Strong and black. What's up? Can I get an amen?
Strong and black and hot. Hey, Jeffrey, thank you so much for having me. I got a boat, man. I love you all. Love you too, Ebony. Gotta go.
Okay, bye, Mark.
Bye.
All right. Take care. And just a few more updates. We got a couple minutes. All right. So the RAD Community Action Meeting. This is happening Thursday, May 25th, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. The Root Social Justice Center in Brattleboro, Vermont. Our political director Isaac Grimm, he will be hosting that. Join our neighbors in Brattleboro for the movement, politics, and training. This is going to be really cool. He just got back from Chicago on some People's Action Network training on how to do movement politics, and it's going to be extremely informative for all of those who are involved in different movements, no matter what your cause is. On Friday, May 26th, the Bennington Healthcare Rally will be held. Band-Aids won't fix this mess, you know? This will be hosted from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Station House in Bennington. Bennington has one of our largest rad groups down there. They're extremely active and do a lot of really great work. The VWC, the Planned Parenthood, rad of course. PNHP, the Bennington Free Clinic, the Bennington Oral Health Coalition, Turning Point Recovery Center will be a part of this rally in celebrating the 2011 signing of Vermont's Healthcare for All Law, Act 48. Tell your local legislators, tell all of your legislators, the local and statewide, that we need the system now, because together we win. Healthcare system is more important than a Band-Aid, you know. Also, save the dates. The Rally for Truth will take event on Saturday, June 3rd. The film screening for The Best Democracy Money Can Buy is on Thursday, June 8th at 6:30 p.m. Vermont LGBTQIA Solidarity March will be in Montpelier on Saturday, June 10th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Starting at the Department of Labor State House. The march will begin at 10:30 a.m. and have fun. Come, bring the whole family. It'll be a great event. The March for the Milk with Dignity is another event that will be happening on Saturday, June 17th for 7 a.m. with the Ben & Jerry's, right at the Ben & Jerry's in Waterbury. Those of you who don't know, Ben & Jerry's, they need to get better at treating their farmers with dignity. They have a lot of migrant workers that they are not getting paid. They are being treated completely unfairly and need better working conditions. So we're doing that. Also, last plug and final plug.
Wait,
this is
I have some plugs on yours.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Oh, absolutely. Hop in on this.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say, come in the Shop for Change in Winooski, 325 Main Street is in Winooski. And our new summer hours is from Tuesday to Saturday, 8 to 1 p.m. And then afterwards, we'll be having different workshops, so you can call and see what's going on for the week. And also, if you haven't signed up already, sign up for August 31st. We're having our first women's conference focusing on women of color in Vermont.
Excellent. Yeah, this is a phenomenal shop. So all of your business meetings, come have them here. If you're meeting up with friends, come have them here.
Best coffee. You really have to.
It's really the best coffee. Like, this coffee is so good. Like, I'm pretty sure it's picked by Ebony herself. If you're sick of the patriarchy, come grab a scone. If you're sick of white supremacy, come grab some tea. Let's sip some tea. If you're sick of anything and everything that's going on around here, just come, because it's a safe and wonderful space. Come crunch on a biscotti. All right. So, So, anyone have any questions that they would like to?
We could try to do the nail name channel. Go. You got him.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Ooh. Too much juice, my bad.
Do we have someone there with a question? All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the show. Have a wonderful day, and we love you. Cheers.